Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Maricopa County Branch NAACP membership and monthly meeting. Membership, it is officially a membership meeting. However, the community is invited to join us, and we are pleased to have you with us. And would like to let you know that be sure that we have your email address so that you get our weekly updates on what the branch is doing. If you're not on our mailing list, number one, put your email in the chat. Secondly, check your spam for an email from Maricopa County NAACP, because we give you updates at least on a weekly basis. So thank you for joining us. I am Karen Hardin, president of the branch, and our branch, for those of you that are new to the call, was established in 1919 here in metropolitan Arizona. We are called the Maricopa County branch, and our listserv is over about 500 people. At this time, I have the pleasure of turning the meeting over to our third vice president, who is also our political action chairperson, Dr. Camilla Westenberg. And thank you for joining us. We must protect the vote. Everybody, every single person should have the right and privilege to vote without obstacles. So Dr. Westenberg, turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I too would like to thank you for being here this afternoon. As you can see, our initiative is protect the vote. Voting never, 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 never gonna give it up. And so our focus this afternoon will be on voting suppression. And I am going to hand it over to one of our political action committee members, Patrick Brown, who has secured our speaker for this afternoon. Patrick, please.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. Yes, today, like I said, we've been discussing, the issues of voter suppression, and not only just Arizona, but across the nation. But like I said, in Arizona, we've had issues with voter suppression very recently with some of the laws being passed by our state legislature. So today we invited Karen Hernandez with Our Voice, Our Vote Arizona to provide us with a presentation, as well as some call to action, some things we can do from our areas here as we attend this meeting to do our part to combat this voter suppression. So if you're not familiar with Our Voice, Our Vote Arizona, it is a member-led organization. They're committed to advocating for progressive policies, as well as building power by mobilizing voters, training the next generation of leaders, electing champions into office, and holding elected officials accountable. And their thing is they want to put people first and uplift the voices of the community. So a lot of their mission is aligned to that of the Maricopa County NAACP. So we go ahead and turn things over to Karen and let her take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me today. It's a pleasure. I'm super excited to do this presentation with you all. Anytime I get to talk about voter suppression, it excites me because not necessarily voter suppression, but it excites me because I get to talk to more people and make them knowledgeable as to what is going on and any efforts that we can do ourselves to make sure that we're pushing back and fighting back, because like we know, our voice is our vote, and it's super important to vote. So I'm just going to share my screen very quickly, and then we'll jump right in. Awesome. So today we will be talking about SB 1485 and U. So sorry, getting a little bit of a lag here. Awesome. So today we will be talking about SB 1485 and U and what the Pebble Purge means for Arizona voters. But quickly, just to do a little introduction, like I said, my name is Karen Hernandez. I am the Civic Engagement Director for Our Voice, Our Vote Arizona. And I've been working with Our Voice, Our Vote for about 6 years now. Really love the work that we're doing and the work that we're going to continue to do for the community. So just a little bit about Our Voice, Our Vote Arizona. We are a member-led organization that was founded in 2017. And we have actually grown to be one of the largest Black-led nonprofits in Arizona. We also like to talk about how we do have a very multicultural, diverse team, which allows us to just kind of be aware of everything that's going on and just get a more deeper understanding from each community. We're also volunteer focused, so we work with community to empower the community. We understand how important it is to mobilize others' voices and ensure that they speak their minds and can share what they believe, what their beliefs are. So just some of the stuff that we worked on in 2020. So we actually helped on our sister organization, Arizona Coalition for Change side, we actually helped extend the voter registration deadline by 10 days. And in those 10 days, we were able to register about 35,000 people. And that wasn't a particular party, it was people all around the state of Arizona. So on our Voice, Our Vote side, we also, with community partners, knocked over 1 million door knocks last year and made about 8 million calls and sent the equivalent of texts. So, you know, we did a lot of stuff last year, and we also ran the largest Black GOTV campaign in Arizona history, which we called Black Wave, to increase Black voter turnout. And so the reason I mention the number of knocks that we did last year is that because, as we know, Biden won Arizona last year, but Biden only won by 9,000 votes or so. So all of the work that us and many of the other organizations did really helped and put those efforts into turning Arizona blue, hopefully continuing to keep Arizona blue. But yeah, and I do want to give a shout out to anyone else on this call who did knock doors or made a series of calls with any other organizations. You guys also did that and really helped make Arizona blue. So let's get started. So as I talked about last year, we did a lot of work which turned Arizona blue, and it made a lot of people in the legislature very angry. So some of the things that they started to do this year was throw countless voter suppression bills out to target those communities that finally showed out to vote. So our response to the specific voter suppression was we actually had canvassers out in the community in LD 15, 20, and 21, which were some of those districts that we knew that we could put a lot of pressure on the specific representatives as well as legislators, which we could potentially get to vote no on specific bills if they were hearing back by a lot of their constituents. Also, we created partnerships with local nonprofits, businesses, and stakeholders who would be deeply impacted by any of these bills. And as we know, many people would be. So we also had organizers throughout the state targeting Maricopa, Southern Arizona, and rural areas. We knew that, you know, these specific bills don't just affect one specific city or county, they affect all of Arizona. So we need to reach every single person in Arizona and to ensure that their voices are being heard. And we also collected petitions asking specific legislators and senators to vote no on bills like SB 1485. And we were able to gather over 7,000 signatures, which was amazing. We continued to share the link, and afterwards they're still continuing to get signatures. So yeah, so in order to understand SB 1485, which is one of those bills that is crazy. This one is actually one of those bills that did make it out of all the, there was countless bills that died and didn't make it out, but this was one of those that did. So to just kind of have a deeper understanding, we're gonna talk about the history of 1485. So SB 1485, the breakdown. So this bill was originally SB 1069, and it had actually failed the House. The reason it had failed was because actually one Republican legislator actually decided to vote no and made it a tie with 15 Republicans and 14 Democrats and 1 Republican, which was something that many people did not expect for it to happen. I know that when we heard SB 1069 failed, it was a huge relief. But what happened was that it was revived as a striker in SB 1485. And if many of you don't know what a striker is, it is a strike all amendment to remove the entire content of the bill in order for it to be reused again in another bill. And so this was a way that Ugenti Rita could continue to continue to bring it up, because she had been trying for a very long time to get this bill passed. And if you guys don't know who Ugenti Rita is, she's actually the sponsor of this bill, and she's also the senator for LD 23. And so just some of the effects of SB 1485, it changes the permanent early voting list to the active voting list. And just a little fun fact that I just like to throw out there is that essentially we were when this bill first came up, we were telling people that they were trying to remove the P in Pebble, and the acronyms would be called evil. So we were telling people, look, it literally says it in the name, it's evil, it does nothing good. And we think the legislature kind of got word of that and couldn't keep it as the early voting list, so had to add the active in there. So it was the active early voting list. So now it became able and not evil. So that's just something I like to throw in there, because they were just receiving so much backlash for this specific bill. It also changes the way voters can be removed from the list. So if you are on the permanent early or the active voting list, you essentially before had to request to be removed from it. But if you missed an election or anything happened, you would still continue to get your ballot. But what this does now is that you will get a postcard in the mail after a certain amount, after you miss 2 consecutive election cycles, asking you to opt in to say you still want to continue to get your ballot in the mail. And this is also delegates the able curation to the county recorder's office. So this adds an additional process to the county recorder, so that every year they now have to take extra time. I'm not sure how they're going to delegate that, but take time to check who voted last year and who didn't, in order to ensure that everyone gets the proper gets the postcard to be retained on the list. So just something that also happened during this was Townsend versus the GOP. So Senator Kelly Townsend is a Republican from and she is in Legislative District 16. And so SB 1485 went kind of zombie mode. And the reason I say this is because on April 22nd, Senator Kelly Townsend voted no on SB 1485, which is a very big shock to all of us. We were expecting it to pass, and we were all getting ready to, put pressure on the governor after this, but it did not pass. And so what Ugenti Rita, the sponsor of the bill, did was voted no as well, so that there was a potential for the bill to come back. It was an attempt to save the bill for it to return. There was a lot of going back and forth between Senator Ugenti Rita and Townsend. Originally, Senator Townsend said that she would not be voting on any election-related bills based on the audit. And if many of you don't know what the audit is, it's just that was when they were doing the recount of the ballots for last year's election, because they claimed that there was some type of fraud committed last year with elections. But she had claimed that up until the audit ended, she would be voting no on every single bill. It had nothing to do with this specific bill. She did agree with it, but she would not be voting on any of them. And then, so while that was happening, we were all brainstorming what we could do to just put the pressure, because right now this bill was dead, and this bill was essentially dead. We weren't sure what was going to happen. So then on May 8th, which is a weekend, a Saturday, SB 1485 was added to the Senate's agenda without notice. So typically what happens is throughout the week, they release the agenda. So we'll know, okay, on Tuesday, they'll be speaking about this specific bill, they'll be doing this. But just as a strategy, they said, we're gonna do it on Saturday when there aren't people paying attention. It's the weekend. Who's paying attention to bills being added to the agenda? And so luckily we were, some of our partners were able to catch that, and we were able to organize and say, hey, this bill is back. We need to do something. We need to show them that we are not for it. So then on May 11th, on Tuesday, we were still in the belief that because Senator Townsend said she would not be voting yes on any bills because of the audit, she would continue to vote no, essentially leaving this bill dead. But what happened was that SB 1485 was passed, with Townsend admitting that she was now a yes after being told her bills would be reconsidered. And SB 1241, which is Townsend's bill, has now been moved to the House. So we're just waiting right now to see what that essentially happens. But she essentially gave in to voting yes because she got what she wanted in return, since she was receiving so much backlash for voting no on this bill. So what happened? Let's talk about Ducey's panic. So normally when the governor gets a bill, it takes 2 to 5 days for the governor to sign it and then be released. But what happened with this specific bill is that only 45 minutes of this bill being on Ducey's desk, he signed it and released a pre-recorded video. So he already knew, he pre-recorded this video with the intent that he knew he was going to receive so much backlash from so many community members because of passing this bill. There was so much uproar and so much talk on this bill prior that he was like, I'm going to have to release the video because people are just going to be calling and calling. And what does this mean? They were afraid. They knew that as soon as they got to his desk within those amount of days, those 2 to 5 days, it typically days, we were going to have this enormous pressure campaign. People were going to have consistent press conferences. We were going to mobilize community members to consistently call his office and tell him to vote no. Instead, he said, I don't want to deal with that. I'm just going to sign it into legislation. So that's just a little history on SB 1485. I will dig in deeper into the bill meaning, but is there any questions so far on just the history and what's happened so far? No. And I'll give it like a minute or two.
And folks, if you guys have questions as the presentation's going on, feel free to definitely put it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat and I'll let Karen know if any questions kind of pop up from there.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to SB 1485 and its interpretation, which is it's a very big legislation and its possible effects. So a bad bill of big legislation. So typically a bill is meant to be retroactive, but with this specific bill, because it is so vague and the language is hard to understand, we don't, based on what we're seeing, we're wondering, is it like retroactive or is it only future purposes? So Ducey Rita essentially wanted it to be a retroactive bill, which means that it would take place from past elections. So meaning that if you hadn't voted in any past elections, those would count towards your strikes. But as members of the Senate team started to read the bill and understand it, they realized that it had nothing to do with retroactivity, but more so future based. So what that tells us is that the Ducey Rita, after writing the bill herself, didn't know what she wanted. She knew she wanted it to be take effect with some of the people, with those who voted in the past, but with the language that was written, it was only meant to take place in future elections. So as we can see, because her intent, because what's written isn't replicated in her intent, that means this was just a bill to really just find a way to suppress people's votes as opposed to like really doing something thorough. So essentially, this bill also had so many changes made throughout it as it was on the floor. So before it had 3 strikes, and when I say 3 strikes, it comes to the term of baseball, when 3 strikes and you're out. It went from being from 3 elections to 4 elections. So as we can see, there was constant change through the legislative process, with them not really knowing how to adjust this bill in order to get it to pass. And so what this bill does, it disproportionately affects minorities. So an example, Latinos, they make up 15% of the electorate. But with this bill being passed, it would purge about 35% of those on the list. So, you know, this is just a direct attack on minorities and people of color. And so talking about SB 1485 and reading the tea leaves and understanding understanding the bill. So in the text of SB 1485, it says if the voter fails to vote early ballot in all elections for 2 consecutive election cycles. So reading this, people can interpret it in many different ways. So there's 2 that come to mind, at least for me. So all meaning all. So as we know, meaning like a voter fails to vote using an early ballot in any election equivalent to 1 strike. So what we know is that every year there's 2 elections. We have the primary and we have the general. So one way to take it is if you say you miss voting in the primary election, you automatically get a strike. So that would be one meaning of it. Another meaning of it would be, rereading the text, is the voter fails to vote an early ballot in all elections for 2 consecutive election cycles. I also take that to mean all meaning 1, which means if the voter fails to vote using an early ballot in all elections, meaning 4 strikes. So in the specific text, it says all elections for 2 consecutive election cycles. What we know is that in an election cycle, we typically have 2 elections, the primary and general. So when I mean 1 is that in 2 consecutive election cycles, we have 4 elections. So meaning potentially if you only vote in 1, if you miss one of those, you can still be kept. So as you can see, that it's just very hard to understand. There isn't much, it doesn't really delegate and explain how this bill needs to be used. And what this does is it also leaves it up to the county recorders to decide how to use the specific language. So we had one of our organizers, Tim, actually reached out to Pima County Recorder Gabriela Casares Kelly and asked, can you help clarify the effects on SB 1485? As it's written, it uses the word all ambiguously. As a county recorder, you would be tasked with enforcing said law. Do you read all to mean you can just vote early in all elections, or is that you only have to vote once? And what she responded was, to clarify, you can mail back your ballot. You can mail back your mail ballot or deliver it in person during early voting or election day in at least 1 election between 2022, 2024, and you will remain on the active early voting list. So as we can see, the Pima County Recorder is identifying it as differently. So basically saying within those 2 election cycles, if you only miss 1, that's the only one that's going to be counted towards you. It's not necessarily going to affect you in any other way. So just a question that I do want to ask is, what do you think would happen if 2 county recorders applied this specific bill differently? What do you guys think would happen?
Well, it'd be grounds for a lawsuit.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So what this actually does is that it allows us to find ways to push back if the laws are different. Like you said, it can definitely open up a lawsuit, which can be due to mismatched enforcement. So say like here in Maricopa County, they say like if you miss the primary election, that counts as 1 strike. But as the Pima County Recorder said, she is enforcing it. If you miss at least 1 election between 2022 and 2024, we can say, hey, like it should not be like that. They should be equal all across the board. This law needs to be interpreted this way. Another way is a ballot initiative where we collect signatures from community members enforcing and saying, hey, this is not a bill that we want. This is something that is not good for us. We need to remove it. As of now, I don't know of any organizations that are doing any work that has to do with a lawsuit or a ballot initiative, but I'm sure as you know, the year is coming, next year is coming, and this year is coming to, I'm sure many teams, organizations are strategizing to find ways to make sure that this bill does not affect many people from getting off the active early voting list.
So Karen, let me,
Yeah.
we do have one question in the chat, so
Okay.
I'll just read it to you here.
Awesome,
So
thank
if
you.
you don't vote, and this is from Kinja, so if you don't vote in the primary, but vote in the main election, that counts against you.
Yes, it does. It would essentially count because it's talking about all elections. It's not talking about just the one, because they count the primary election as a regular election. I know many people tend not to vote in the primary, mostly in the general, but that's also another reason why they did that, to target people of color primarily.
So one other thing, we actually, and we're going to save it for the end of your presentation. We do actually have information on one organization that's is doing a ballot referendum on SB 1485. So we'll share that at the end.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so is there any other questions on this bill? Awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna move on and just kind of talk about some of the things, just like, where does this leave our community? So just a quick note, like, you must vote once using your early ballot in 2 elections. I know we tend, sometimes it's the primary election and we have the general, like, oh, we'll vote in the general. Like, your vote is at risk essentially right now. So like, vote in every single election that you can. It is super important. I cannot stress that enough, because we don't know how this law specifically is going to be interpreted. And so this could potentially, one year you're like, where's my early ballot? I never received it. And you're gonna have to go to the polls. And we know that those lines are extremely long. It falls on a Tuesday. It is also a work day, and it definitely, right now, there's not a specific law that says you can take election day off. It's a holiday. So please don't wait till the last year when you get that postcard. It's super important that you're just continuing to vote. Our actions over the next 2 election cycles are what really counts. It shows them that regardless of them passing these bills, we're going to continue to vote. Our voices are going to continue to be heard. They're not going to silence us. So us continuing to vote and show them that all of the things that they're throwing our way isn't going to back us down. We're going to continue to exercise our right to vote. And also, you must use your early ballot to vote. So I know typically, I've heard some people, when they receive their early ballot, they use it more as like kind of a scope and a guide to see who's on the ballot, research them, and then go vote in person. If you vote in person, that would count as a strike towards you. So this doesn't mean that you're not voting. Like, the SB 1485 doesn't attack specific people who are voting. It specifically attacks those on the active early voting list. So if you do not use your ballot and submit it or drop it off at the polling place, it can count as a strike towards you if you vote in person. Also, I know sometimes things happen, we lose our ballots. You can also request a new one. Make sure you request a new one, because if you don't, that would also count towards a strike. But if you do not mail your ballot back, that is fine. You can still drop it off at your polling location as long as you're using the envelope and the ballot that you received in the mail. It's not an issue. It's just about not voting in person at the polls. Awesome. And so another thing that I just want to say is, how can we help others? Create accountability, let our family and friends and neighbors know about this bill and what's going to happen and how it can directly impact them and impact, their family and their friends. So we want to create a mental linkage that when we get a ballot, we send a ballot. As soon as we receive it, send it back. Create a timeline in which you fill it out. I know sometimes we don't know who's specific names on the ballot, and we want to do our research. That is fine, but ensuring that once we fill it out, we create we create a system in which, you know, it's submitted back. Also ensuring that they have the tools to assist themselves and eventually others. I know for me, some of my friends sometimes don't know how to fill out their ballots or have questions on who's on there or where to return it. I tend to say, hey, like, let's all get together, fill out our ballots. Let's do a little bit of research and help one another learn more about someone. And so I think that's like kind of having like a election, like a voting party, or creating a sense of like, hey, it's time to vote. Let's do something, vote together, or, you know, find a website that you can share with your friends that shows them who's on the ballot, what they stand for, if it aligns with them or not, as well as, you know, something super important that we do when we're canvassing and we're out in the field is having voters create voting plans. What this does is it allows them to have a solidified date and time of when they're going to fill it out. We do have a voting plan that we create for, or targeted questions that we ask. So some vote plans for early voting style is asking friends like, have you filled out your early ballot yet? If someone hasn't, remind them to do so now as opposed to later. We know that it's like, I'll do it later, you know, and later just never comes. That time never comes. Sometimes it's the day of or the day before. So making sure that you ask that ask that question. Also, a good question to ask is like, you know, ballots are coming out. Hey, have you received your ballot? I just got mine in the mail. You should go check your mailbox right now so you can fill it out. Also, what day will you return your early ballot? Are you going to be mailing it in the mailbox? Are you going to be dropping it off? What do you do? October 27th is actually the last day to mail it in. And after that, you cannot mail it in because they won't receive it in time and it won't be counted. So what we tend to do is tell people, hey, you can no longer put it in the mailbox. Make sure that you find your closest polling location and drop it off. And we also, if people don't know their polling locations, we tend to also help them find those. There's websites. You can go to the county recorder, and there's a link there. Fill out your name, and it'll tell you all the voting centers that you can go drop it off at, as well as where will you be dropping off your early ballot. Like I said, on the county recorder site, you can find the location of where there's voting sites. So it could either be they're dropping it off at the post office, in their mailbox, at a vote center, a ballot drop-off box, or anywhere in their assigned precinct. So there's many options to do that. But like I said, once the deadline of the mail-in, which is October 27th, we encourage people to find a ballot drop box to make sure that their vote is counted, because it just takes a little bit longer to get there in the mail. Awesome. So any questions?
No, but I have a comment.
Yes.
As I'm listening to the list of pitfalls that one can fall into that would prevent you from voting, and I have heard them before, it occurred to me, as I'm here listening and it's resonating again, is it feasible within the community to create some kind of, because I really think that people need to be motivated to be engaged. If there is some kind of self-report card, and I mean a self-report card that is not to be shared with anyone, but just for yourself. For example, you go to get your vaccine. I'm holding on to that card. That card is important to me. That's my documentation of what I've done. It doesn't belong to anyone else. As a matter of fact, when it was given to me, you could write in yourself what you received and the date in one instance. Well, there were only two, but yeah. So I'm wondering if there's something, don't lose your vote. Don't lose your vote. And just as you were talking about the plan here and in the election coming up, and it reached the point for mobilization where everything was, the whole essence was make a plan, make a plan, make a plan. Can we mobilize a plan now that can get people engaged now in some format that they can have, that can go in their wallet, in their bag, and it's a check, and they have to they are responsible for following that format. I think it's good to get the information, but I just, that plan that you were talking about, I think I'm talking about rather than dealing with it from an abstract concept to make it a concrete.
Yeah.
And so I just think something like that might work well, and to start it early, because people need to begin thinking in those terms now.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think, that's a great idea. I think it's just a matter of like find the best way to execute it, and what, like, if
Right.
essentially we did make a card, how would that card look like? How would we
Right.
ensure that people didn't lose it?
Right.
I think it would just be a matter of just really going to the drawing board and digging in deeper to how we can reach everyone. And maybe it could also be like a link that people use to say, like, check your voter stat, like your status. I believe on the county recorder site, you can also check your status of your election and like what elections you voted also. So that could also be a sense of like showing people like, hey, here's where you can check if you voted in your last election, or if you're up to date. And just showing them that linkage and where they can find those resources.
Because people need to start that now.
Yes, definitely. I think as we're talking about it, I think many people, many people still don't know that SB 1485 passed. I've talked to family members of mine, and they're also like, wait, what? When did that happen? And I know that, like, even myself, with so many voter suppression bills coming out, there's some that I'm like, oh my God, this one passed. Wait, this one passed too. We were just worried about this one. So I think that, like, right now, a lot of orgs are doing work to get people to mobilize. I know on ours, we're trying to strategize what we can do to counteract all of these bills. But I think the idea that you brought to mind is also a great idea that we can use to start to push out now.
Just a thought, just musing.
No, it's a good thought. Any idea is a good idea if we can reach out to people and ensure that they know that this is happening, so that they can continue to vote, and just they themselves be accountable, and they can check themselves with like a little checklist. Thank you. Any other questions? Awesome. So I'm gonna move on. So why wait? So what we're gonna do is that there's a call to action. So we're actually gonna have you all email your governor and let him know specifically how you feel about the passing of SB 1485. We know that he's gonna run again next year, and that a lot of people are very angry right now, and he needs to know that. He needs to feel how we felt when these bills passed, specifically 1485. So this is an email template, and I will drop the link in the chat shortly. But it says, "Dear Governor Ducey, my name is Karen Hernandez, and I'm writing to you today to express my disappointment in your vote on SB 1485. Arizonans don't need more barriers to the ballot, and that legislation is moving us in the wrong direction. This is an attack on democracy and an infringement on my right to vote. As bills like SB 1421 and others like it emerge, I wholeheartedly urge you to veto all bills looking to limit voting in Arizona. I am aware that you are considering a run for higher office, and I will consider your actions in signing SB 1485 and any other actions that attempt to limit my ability to vote in Arizona. Sincerely, Karen Hernandez." So you would essentially just put your name. Is there any questions on that so far? And the reason that we did governor is because I'm not sure if we're all in the same legislative district or not, but it ultimately passed through the governor. So that's the person we want to put the most pressure on right now. And then I did just drop the link in the chat also, so that you can access the email and just kind of copy and paste it. I just wanted to show you all what that email looked like. And we'll just take about 3 to 5 minutes if all of you just want to access it, so you guys can send that email. Awesome. So I'm just gonna move on. Does anyone have any other questions on the specific email or anything they'd like to know?
No.
Awesome. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate it and allowing me to just talk more about voter suppression bills, especially 1485 and the direct attack it has on all of us. I do want to let you know we do have other trainings if you guys are interested in having someone on me or any of my other team members on. We have many other events going on. I also do just in the chat want to drop a link just to get feedback back on today's presentation and just to see if there would be any other trainings you would be interested in or any other trainings you believe our organization should have. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I had an awesome time today.
All right, thank you, Karen. Thank you for attending and giving us this great information. We do want, just before we go into some general questions and conversations, we do want to share a bit of information regarding one of the organizations that is doing something to address SB 1485. It's an organization called Arizona Deserves Better, and they're a nonprofit. They're formed a few years back to address the resignation of an Arizona legislator who had a criminal record. And now this organization is shifting their focus on sponsoring a referendum campaign against SB 1485. They actually have petitions that are available for signature, and they're also looking for individuals to be willing to volunteer to gather signatures on this petition, pretty much for a referendum. Referendum to appear on the next ballot. That's would be the 2022 election. They would need to collect 120,000 signatures, and that's just the minimum. So when you do a petition, you obviously want to go over the minimum for it to appear in the ballot. There is a bit of a deadline to this. So the way the referendum process works in Arizona is that you have 90 days from the end of the legislative session. So currently the legislature is still in session. They're still going over the stuff with the budget. But when they conclude the session, then that 90-day clock starts. But they've already got the petitions ready. They're actually already distributing and gathering signatures throughout the state right now. But they're of course looking for volunteers who are willing to, like I said, go get signatures, or like I said, just sign the petition. I'm going to drop an email address in the chat here in just a moment. So if you're interested in either being a volunteer to distribute, or get signatures, or, just say, hey, I want to sign, where I can go and sign so I can add my name to this petition, you'll be able to get that information by that email.
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any other questions regarding this community session, or any comments? And if not, I will hand it back over to our president, Dr. Harden.
I'm checking. Any questions in the chat, Patrick?
No questions.
None.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you very much for organizing our guest speaker today. And just want everybody to remember that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is a nonpartisan organization. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we are not promoting any particular candidates. As our political action committee brings us education and informational sessions, we are not promoting a political party. The NAACP promotes policies that are in the best interest of everyone. and I'll mention it again, I did it at the top of the meeting, that we believe every single person has a right to vote, regardless of their political affiliation and or their ethnicity. So the NAACP supports everybody having the right to vote. And if you agree with that, if you agree that everybody should have the right to vote, please follow up with some of these suggestions that you've heard today. And I would ask you to watch our website. Also, be sure to check and make sure you're getting our updates. We give branch updates constantly. That email is just Maricopa County Branch. I don't think it has NAACP on the end of it, does it, Patrick? But it's individualized. It will
Yeah,
come.
I'm dropping a link if folks, like I said, if you want to follow us, either through our social media, our website, or joining our email address. It'll be kind of a one-stop shopping link.
Great. Okay. Our organizational bylaws ask us to give branch updates once a month to people. And the way we have chosen to do that is that we have a listserv, and that listserv gives you updates like on a weekly basis, at least, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. So we don't wait and give you updates once a month. You can get them constantly. So join our listserv. We just successfully had, as far as updates, we just successfully had a vaccine program where we were encouraging students to get vaccinated. Our branch understands that whether you get vaccinated is an individual choice. We're not trying to influence anyone to make their decision about being vaccinated. Our position is, if you're going to choose to be vaccinated, then we will provide you with a $50 gift card to students. We also had airline tickets. People who came to get their vaccination can be put in a drawing for round trip airline tickets with Alaskan Airlines and Southwest Airlines. The next time that this will occur will be July 17th. So please watch our website and sign up for our listserv. With that, let me
Dr.
just.
Harden, may I say one more thing? If anyone would like to use our backdrop vote, please do. It is to get the message out everywhere I go virtually. This is what I use because we have to make some noise. That message just has to go out there repetitively for the public to understand that something is being compromised, that our democracy is at risk. And so I would encourage you and invite you to use this backdrop when you do your virtual meetings.
We will share our backdrops, and those of you that have
indeed.
better computer systems than I, it'll come clear like Carla's and Dr. Westenberg's. Okay, mine is there. It's just being compromised, but it's just like our backdrop is in accordance with what our guest speaker said, and thank you to our guest speaker that she was encouraging sending, a letter. We have to speak out that we are not comfortable. We don't agree. We do not agree with our rights being taken away from us, and using this backdrop or something like this. It's a visual signal. It's telegraphing to them is that we will not be satisfied, right? Now this is a personal editorial. I'm glad we recognize the Juneteenth holiday, but we want our voting rights. We can't be sidetracked to say, oh, you got a holiday, but you don't have any rights to vote, right? Or you can't teach about what the Juneteenth stands for. So with that, I would say thank you and open it up. If anyone has any community announcements, we have about 5 minutes. Anybody have any community announcements they would like to share, activities that are going on? Right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see you in July. Have a great day, everyone.